Hello, good evening. Hello, hello. You're all full of caviar and champagne, whatever it is they're serving downstairs. Good, I'm John. I run the Scale Factory, which is a DevOps and infrastructure consultancy based here in London. We help customers design, build, scale and operate their infrastructure. And for most of the last year, I've been what I think is charitably referred to as post-technical, where I've spent most of my time working on actually hiring people, bringing more business into the organisation, rather than getting my hands dirty and actually doing things with technology, which is kind of what I signed up for in the first place, but we'll get to that. So obviously Mehdi set the scene. Literally everybody is saying this at the end of their slide deck at every conference and every meetup you go to, right? Yeah. Hands up, whose company is hiring right now for DevOps engineers? Okay, literally everybody, like the whole room. Are you people, like, keep your hand up if you're responsible in some way for that hiring process, like you are the hiring manager or you're part of the interview chain or any of that kind of thing. Okay, so there's lots of people involved there as well. Good stuff. So as I say, we doubled the size of the team last year, and so our hiring pipeline is something that we have worked at quite a bit, and specifically because we're a smallish organisation, we've been kind of interested in making sure that doesn't take up too much of our time, but that we still give it the care and attention that it deserves. And so this is kind of what our hiring pipeline looks like. We'll go through it in a bit more detail over the next 20 minutes or so. I'm going to ignore Matt waving his 5-minute banner around because that's. I've got 5 minutes left. Shit. No. All right. So first up, you're likely to want to write your job description, right? You don't know, you can't really hire anybody unless you know the types of people you want to hire for. And I think the thing that we kind of settled on was that it was really important to have a good understanding of what are actually required, like what are the absolute, like, deal or no deal, these people must have these qualities, and how much of that is a nice to have. And we kind of looked over other people's job ads, and there's an awful lot of like you must have. There's a lot of like required stuff, which I think causes people to rule themselves out. Whereas really we were able to distill it into, actually we need people who have production experience with Linux, and who've worked with configuration management. Like everything else is a learnable skill. They can learn on the job. If you haven't touched AWS before, that's fine. We have done that. There's training we can take you on. So our requirements were sort of easy to settle on. Also have a think, like if your job description requires people who are applying to have a computer science degree, like is that really necessary? I mean, certainly there are things about my CS degree that I do use on a occasional basis, but I've also worked with a lot of really good engineers who don't have any of that under their belt. So have a think about whether that's actually that important. In a competitive market, as obviously it is because literally everybody is hiring, it's almost more important in your job ads to talk about the things that you're offering in return. Like that's how you're differentiating yourself as a company that you want people to come and work for. And you're also going to be careful you're not unintentionally excluding anybody from the application process. And we'll cover that in a couple of slides. So this is the sort of horrible shit that you'll see on websites or floating around on Twitter. If you follow shit recruiters say Twitter accounts, like there's a lot of this sort of thing, and it's pretty heinous, right? It's pretty awful, and it's pretty exclusionary as well. Like fearless and driven are words that are considered to be male coded, so it's more likely that you will have male-identified people applying for this job than you are female-identified people, and that might be turning people away unintentionally. So be careful about how you word some of these things. Similarly, like if you're providing meals, like it's a great perk if you're a startup to be providing like lunch for people. But if you're also providing breakfast and dinner, like have a little think about what that is suggesting is your work culture. Right? If you're providing meals at every end of the day and doing laundry and like all the other things that the Valley companies do, then maybe you're setting expectations that this is a long working hours business. And that's going to put off people with families, people who have commitments outside of work for maybe caring for sick relatives or whatever. And you might not want to exclude those people. And by sort of presenting your job ad like this, you might be excluding them unintentionally. Similarly, free beer, right? I guess you've all had a lot of free beer or champagne or Bollinger or whatever it is you've got downstairs. Free beer as a perk, like, yeah, great, we all love a beer. But Actually, we don't all love a beer. There are plenty of people who don't drink because of either religious reasons or because they're recovering alcoholics or just because they don't want to be drinking, right? And by putting this sort of thing on your job ad as what you're offering as a culture, that's not going to be as inclusive as you might want to be. But think about it this way: if these are the things that you're doing and putting on your job ad, the solution to this is not to remove them from your job ad. The solution is to look at your company culture and figure out whether or not there are more inclusive ways of doing this sort of thing. Also, the less said about ninja, hacker, raging on code bullshit, the better. Like, let's never, ever put that on our job ads. But if I see any of you putting this on a job ad, I'm going to put my guitar down, I'm going to slip silently into your rooms, and I'm going to cut your throats. This link here, genderdecoder.catmatfield.com. Cat's written a Heroku app that will allow you to examine your job ad for female and male coded words. And that will let you come to a better idea of what you should be putting on your job ad. She also links to the research there. It's worth taking a look. So, as I say, in a competitive market, you're looking to demonstrate your value as a company for people to work for. And the thing that we came to an understanding of, or a realization of, is that writing a job description, it's a marketing activity. Anybody consider themselves marketers in the room? One, Doocy, good one. This is kind of like not where most of us are thinking, but we found that's kind of how you need to think about it, and that came as a surprise. Secondly, right, we're all used to like Jenkins or Travis or Circle or those sorts of pipelines for managing code. There are tools available on the market for doing the same sort of thing for your hiring pipeline. So we use Workable, which is a great bit of SaaS software. And as you can see, this kind of gives us a visualization of the pipeline as we go through the process. You can add people's CVs. You can see what other people have commented on. You can track the email conversations you're having with candidates. It's a really useful time saver. And it's sort of like a CRM. If you've done any sales work or sort of support work, having a single kind of point of information about each candidate, really useful stuff. The other thing that we use Workable for really well is these scoreboard or scorecard ideas. And the scorecards let us define our criteria for selection of a candidate ahead of time. So by the time we're on a call or we're sat in a room with somebody, we already know the criteria that we're selecting for, and that helps us reduce like unintentional bias. So by actually laying and codifying out the things that we're looking for, we're much less inclined to just go with gut feel or do that dreaded cultural fit thing because someone's not quite right. But the other good thing is Workable gives you email integration, templated responses as well. Like you're almost certainly going to be sending the same pieces of text to a lot of different people. Workable makes it nice and easy to do that as well. This down here, I'll tweet this later on as well. That's a referral code if you want to use Workable. Give it a try. I believe if you follow that link and you start using Workable, we get gift cards or something. I don't know. So next up, you've written your job role, you've got your pipeline together. Now you need to advertise it. And these are some of the places, most of the places that we advertised the jobs that we were hiring for. Hacker News was terrible, as you might expect if you've ever read the comments there. The quality of applicants we got from Hacker News were people who mostly hadn't read the job description, weren't fully aware that it was in London, wanted to work on our Clojure web projects, that sort of thing. Like we don't do any of that, so I would ignore that probably, unless you're looking for Americans to work on Clojure projects, I guess. We also tried Indeed, which I think we could publish to for free through Workable. There are a few places you can put your job ads up, and on Adzuna, which was in beta. So to be fair to them, that product's improving. Indeed and Adzuna, we didn't really get any traction. We didn't get any job applicants through there at all, really. JobServe and LinkedIn were kind of a mixed bag. We found that JobServe and LinkedIn, they're both commercial products, so you pay to put your listing up. The pricing isn't too bad. We got a large number of applicants through there, but the quality was kind of like 50-50 dubious. So we're quite clear that we couldn't support, for example, tier 2 visa applications. Like we don't have the capacity to do that, but we were still getting people through who were requiring a visa to work. Silicon Milk Roundabout worked well for us. Again, there's a cost involved and quite a lot of like time and energy. It's a sort of hiring event where you sort of show up with a stand and a lot of candidates mill throughout the day, and you get to meet and talk to a lot of people. It's great fun. It's a good way to talk to loads of people. It's good to sort of get a read on the market, what people are looking for. And we did hire at least one person through that route, so that was worth doing. But the sort of the investment in time and energy was pretty high, so you have to be pretty seriously hiring to want to consider that. Twitter, I'm reasonably active on Twitter. Some of you might already follow me. By tweeting out our job links, we got a reasonable amount of traction through Twitter. Obviously, that's free. But obviously, if you're not visible on that platform in general, that's not really going to be any use to you. Really, the winner for us was Stack Overflow Careers. Stack Overflow Careers, turns out that if you are searching Stack Overflow for the problem you're having with Puppet or the problem you're having with AWS, you get targeted job adverts from people who work in those tools. So when you're sort of head in hands going, why doesn't this work? Oh, I'll get another job, that'll solve it. That seems to be the route. We got a good amount of traction through Stack Overflow Careers, and the quality of applicant is pretty high. Like most of the people that are applying do have the skills that we're looking for, which is reasonably unique in the hiring market. And it's fairly consistent. They renew our ad every month. The annual fee for listing is not bad, and we get a fairly kind of regular. I get sort of maybe 3 or 4 applicants a week now, just sort of naturally through Stack Overflow without really having to work at it. They also let you do this kind of natty thing where you can put together a description of your job and the benefits. And I think the fact that you've got a very targeted market who have access to this sort of information means that's really paid off for us. I did contact them about referral codes as well. They didn't get back to me with a referral code, but if you are looking to list a job on Stack Overflow Careers, ask me for details. I'll put you in touch with our account manager there, and he will do us all a discount, I imagine. So having done your listing of jobs, we tweaked a lot of this over time. So our job description, where we posted it, how we engaged candidates through the pipeline, that sort of stuff, we worked on and iterated throughout last year. And we found that it was really important to us to kind of open the funnel up and make sure that there were lots of people applying, or more people applying than we were getting. And so some of the tweaks that we made to help with that were, we made the job description more inclusive, which is a thing I've already covered. In sort of tandem with that, I guess, we made it clear that we were happy for people to work remotely, either part-time or full-time, and in fact, a lot of our team works outside of London, doesn't commute in, they're entirely remote DevOps engineers. And that combined with a sort of flexible attitude to like when people do their work, it doesn't matter to me whether someone's working 9 to 5 or like 10 to 6 or spread throughout the day, as long as they're being healthy to themselves and hitting the requirements that we're asking of them. When that work happens, I really don't mind. And so by being clear about that in our job descriptions, I think we've opened up those roles to people who might not otherwise apply. So we have a couple of guys who have young families, and so they kind of do the school run in the morning, and then they sit down and do some code, and they go and pick the kids up and go and take them swimming, and then they come back, and it's spread out throughout the day. They're still doing good work, but it's working around their family life as well, which I think is really important. Never publish a job ad without putting a damn salary on it, right? That was a thing that we learned fairly early on. If you don't list a salary on your job ads, you spend your life answering questions that are along the lines of, how much are you paying, right? If you're not prepared to publish your salaries, then maybe have a think about why that is. Maybe you're ashamed of how low it is, or maybe you don't want the rest of the team that you employ to see this higher number that you're offering out to the market. Have a word with yourself. Make sure you're showing the salary. I think it's important. The other thing that I think has helped us, at least, is to make yourself visible. I do this sort of thing. I talk at conferences. Some of the other team members do the same thing. Dawn here in the audience has done quite a lot of speaking with our T-shirt on. By being visible, I think you get a better quality of applicant, or at least people recognise you, right? They can go, oh yeah, I remember seeing that guy at the thing. And I think that probably helps. So if you're working for a business that is trying to hire good DevOps people, but you're not sponsoring conferences, or you're not attending conferences, you're not sending your team to events, then maybe you should consider doing that. And the other thing that we learned whilst trying to juggle also running the business was that if you forget a little bit about your hiring pipeline, the people that applied last week who look pretty good, they've already got jobs by the time you talk to them, or they've already got interviews, or they're not interested in talking to you anymore. So by making this a priority on a sort of daily basis in the morning, we were able to stay on top of that communication, and I think we probably, as a result, didn't allow people to slip through the funnel who might otherwise have done. So then it's the selection process. This is kind of our pipeline. As with continuous integration of code, we try and do things that cost less in terms of time and energy first, and fail quickly. So the CV review, it takes 5 minutes. It's mostly keyword matching. It doesn't need to be a highly technical member of staff who's doing that. If you're happy with the CV, it moves on to the next stage. From there, there's a 30 to 45 minute phone conversation, preferably video, so that you can kind of exchange pleasantries and make sure everyone's on the same page. From there, we move into a technical assessment, which is a larger time commitment. We'll talk about in a second. And then from there, it's a face-to-face interview with more team members. And by taking you through the pipeline in those stages, we found that there's enough engagement up front here to make sure people still felt like they wanted to work with us, but we knew much more quickly if people were not suitable, rather than taking them all the way to interviewing with a whole team of people and only then discovering that we didn't want to hire them. So again, another surprise to me. It turns out the phone screen, it's a sales activity. That first 30 minutes is really important for you to be able to sell that job to that candidate. It's much less about whether they're appropriate. By the time you're talking to them, they probably have some relevant skills on their CV. This was really important to differentiate yourself. And we did try sending out the tech assessment first as a kind of time saver. But actually, if you haven't put in this 30 minutes engaging with the candidate, then they're not going to respond by giving you a couple of hours for a technical test. It's just not going to happen. And so that was a surprise. So the phone screen, you're trying to sell a job, you're trying to sell the company, you're trying to make clear the benefits that you have over other employers. We're also at that point checking whether the candidate can communicate clearly. And the reason that's mostly important for me is that because we're a consultancy, we need to send individuals out on site with customers and have them give a good account of themselves. And so we are primarily looking for people who are both conversant, good communicators, as well as good technologists, and that's a more difficult balance to strike sometimes. You're also making sure at this point they've understood the job role that's on offer, and get to ask questions about it, so that they are not applying for something that you're not actually offering as a job. And we also want to talk a little bit about sort of recent technical stuff, so that you can tell whether or not they're bullshitting on their CV, basically. Or at least there's certainly a bit of a trend for people putting stuff on a CV that they've worked in a team that's been doing, rather than they themselves have been doing. Sort of teasing out the difference between those two things is possibly the most important part of this type of conversation. And from there, it's like, do I like you? Like, are we going to get on well if you come and work for the business? We're still quite a small business. Individuals can make or break relationships across the organisation, and so it's important that we get on to some degree. The technical assessment is, for us, it's a Git repo. It's got some Puppet in it. It's got a crappy PHP application in it. There's a Vagrant box that goes along with that. And we present it in a broken state, ask the candidate to do some troubleshooting on it, have them write a bit of Puppet, have them refactor some Puppet, and then do some performance tuning on the application, which they've never seen before because I wrote it and it's horrible. It's an application that contains a number of actual things I've seen in real life heinous environments, just not necessarily all in the same place. And what we're testing for here are, can you follow the instructions? Like, there are four reasonable steps, and although we're not looking for people who just slavishly follow instructions, we do need to hire people who can read and take direction. We're testing their troubleshooting skills, like how able are they to figure out their way around a system that doesn't work very well, and we're testing like whether they think in a DevOpsy kind of way. There's some automation involved. The application itself gets deployed using some automation tools, and we're looking for the candidate to be doing appropriate things in those tools as opposed to just hacking on the box. We're also testing to see whether they can attack a config or an application that they've never seen before, whether they have the confidence to just break into that and start looking around, and whether they have that kind of curiosity, like that sort of drive, which I imagine many of you in the room have, where something doesn't work, you really want to know why, and you're not going to stop until you understand it, and that's kind of what we're testing for there. Following the technical assessment, we did the face-to-face interviews, which is a chance for more than just me to have time with a candidate, which is important because obviously there'll be people working within the team who'll be working with the person that we're looking to hire. We talk about the job that they are just coming out of, and the way a candidate talks about their current job is how they'll be talking about your job when they move on from you. So that's a good indicator of whether or not they're going to be respectful, shall we say. And figuring out the reasons why they've left, like whether that's kind of whether that's fair, whether you understand the reasons, and whether you can identify that you are definitely not an employer that does the same things, right? If someone's left for a particular reason, you need to make sure that you are not providing them a working environment that provides them with the same reason. That's just not going to work out. We like to ask what interested the individual in our role specifically, partly, again, so that we can highlight the sort of whether we've got parity with their understanding of the job and the company and our understanding of the job and the company. We also talk about a recent infrastructure project, and specifically we talk about a recent infrastructure project that the candidate is proud of. And that's quite telling when we get into the details of their involvement and what they were happy with, what they weren't happy with, how that went. It's a good way of understanding, I guess, their ability to tell a story, which is useful from a consultancy perspective. But also it gives us an opportunity to dive into some of the technical work that they've done more recently. We follow that with a whiteboard exercise where we look at a design for a larger system. So we're looking specifically then at their ability to communicate in diagram form, to tell a story to maybe people who are in the selection panel who are not as technical, so they're explaining it at an appropriate level, and for their ability to think about big picture rather than just components, which is people have fallen down on that. Who've done really well in the technical assessment, and that's always been a bit surprising. But these are important skills for us. And this is also a good time to talk about notice period, salary expectations, that kind of thing. And if we're happy at that point, we'll talk with the rest of the interviewing panel. We'll do the scoreboards to make sure that we are measuring against the things that we've said that we care about. And if we're happy at that point, we'll make a job offer. Nice and easy, right? But there's one other optimization I want to talk about a little bit, which might be contentious potentially. Let's talk a little bit about recruiters, right? So, how many people like recruiters? Show of hands. How many of the people who have your hands up are recruiters? Yeah, okay. So I did this search the other night. Yeah, so the takeaway is that recruiters will waste your time if you let them, right? There are a lot of recruiters in London, and if they get a sort of sniff in the waters that you are hiring, you will hear from literally all of them, literally all of the time. So we kind of take some steps to try and mitigate that. I spent an awful lot of time on the phone repeating myself about why we are not looking to use recruiters at this time. So nowadays on the page that lists our careers, we list no recruiters. On the page that has our sales phone number on it, underneath it says, please don't call if you're a recruiter, we would rather hear from you by email. We have a recorded message on the phone line. You phone our sales line, this is the first thing you hear. Like, these are the lengths we've had to go to. And on my LinkedIn page as well is fairly clear, and there's a bunch of more scathing stuff that you can go and look at yourself if you find me on LinkedIn. So we kind of warn them off at that point. Like we warn off on job ads, we warn them off on the websites, we warn off in the recorded phone message, we warn off on LinkedIn. We have some canned email responses that we can send back to say, actually, we're not looking to use recruiters at this time, and here's why. And for those recruiters that ignore all of that, that sort of request not to get in touch, I have a name and shame policy, so on my Twitter feed I'll call out recruiters that are particularly heinous. People who, for example, have read that on the web page, listened to the recorded email, decided they're going to have a chance anyway. Doesn't work out, don't try it. So our optimal hiring pipeline. Stop recruiters wasting your time first. Like that's the main thing. If you genuinely need to hire quickly and to have some of the I guess the legwork taken out of that equation for you, then recruiters probably are a good option. I would recommend that you go for recruiters like Linux Recruit, Prism Digital, LaFosse, who give back to the community, like by sponsoring these types of events, and who almost certainly aren't going to harass any of you tonight after you've had a couple of beers. Deal with that. Write your job description, advertise the role, visualize the pipeline, open the funnel, make a selection. Nice and easy, right? We're also hiring, obviously, and that's me if you need to get in touch. All right.
Any questions for Sean? Yeah,
Job.
There's a mic coming.
There you go. We have a mobile microphone.
I ran into a small problem with your job ad.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I saw it on Stack Overflow Careers, so that's a +1.
Okay, good.
Obviously, at the time, I was researching a problem
Yep.
that I was trying to fix,
Yep.
so I saved it for later, and it required a cover letter.
Right, okay.
And by the time I would have got round to sitting down and writing a cover letter,
Yep.
having polished my CV very recently,
Yep.
I'd basically been offered a job already.
Right, okay. Gotcha. So I think the cover letter requirement is, I think it's a standard workable form thing.
I thought it might be, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're applying, my gut feel is that if you're applying somewhere that is asking for a cover letter and you have a CV that has adequate detail about who you are and what you do, the cover letter really is a paragraph of, hi, I saw your job ad on Stack Overflow, I think I'm appropriate for you, here's my CV. Like it's not a
I
kind
guess.
of, it's not a massive time commitment, but yeah, I get your point. It's a
put me
barrier.
off.
Yeah, it's a barrier.
It put me off to only by like a couple of hours. But
Okay, cool.
It was a save for later kind of thing.
Gotcha. Well, when you get bored of your current job, gentlemen.
So you talked about bias before.
Yes.
How do you go about unbundling bias from your requirements?
So how do we go about unbundling bias from our requirements? So by sitting down as a team and working out the things that we actually care about, we more or less entirely remove things that are to do with skin colour, race, background, like all that kind of stuff. We are literally talking about ability to learn things, ability to communicate with groups, like that sort of thing. It's not going to be perfect. We have sense checked ourselves at the end of an interview when we have interviewed candidates who are from less well represented backgrounds, and we're always sort of I guess a bit more questioning of ourselves. If we don't like that candidate, we take a step back and we go, is it definitely because they don't hit the requirements that we've laid out as our on our score sheets, or is there something unconscious about it? And I think by being aware of it, you help to undermine the bias. Like it's never going to be perfect. I think it's working out so far.
Hi, John.
Hey.
I was just curious, for the technical test,
Yes.
is it offline or online? Do you view the people doing the test?
Yeah, so
or do you leave
the
them
tech test is entirely offline. So it makes me feel slightly awkward sometimes because it's actually quite a significant time commitment, but it's a realistic test of technical skill, and so we say it's open book because when you're working you're going to be like attached to Google and Stack Overflow probably. It doesn't need to be a contiguous set of hours. Like you can come and go to it. Like it's not a massive time commitment. And we ask as part of the instructions as you go to log. So in the performance tuning part, for example, we say take a baseline and then explain what you're doing at every step. And the submission process is a pull request into GitHub. So it's a sort of like you can see the commits coming up over days, and that's fine. I don't believe So I for the type of work we do, it doesn't make sense for us to bring somebody into the building and watch them for 3 hours while they do a tech assessment. But if we were the type of organisation where we were doing a lot of pairing or other collaborative work, then I think we would have to incorporate an element of that into the face-to-face interview, so that we could see whether or not they would perform well under those conditions. We're trying to be as realistic as possible, and realistically, most of the team are out on their own on site with a customer, or they're working remotely on Puppet problems, and that's kind of, we're simulating that as far as we can.
Cool. Thank you very much, John.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? If you can
Find
ask
me
later.
after beer, yeah, no worries.
Yeah, thank you very much.